Bit of a combo session this one was, as I came home the night before, late-ish. I had an early wake up the next day, and I didn't really want to take anything away from the sleeping. Also, I noticed that if I am kind of cramming things in a short time frame where I'm doing some training outside after work, and then I have something to eat, and then I go to bed, I don't really sleep as well. So I think that generally speaking, at least on average, there should be a good time distribution among all of these things. So training, eating, and sleeping. And sometimes if the window is too small, it's not really that great, and I end up feeling it. So this was a bit of a combination, as I said, of the leg work that was going to come in the form of squats on this very day, and something that I was planning to do on the previous day that I ended up postponing to this one here, which was some jumping stuff. And the way that I decided to go about it was in my typical fashion with supersets. But in this instance, I thought about doing contrast supersets. So I was getting some work on the squats, which, by the way, I was slowly rolling towards the intensity and volume that I was doing before. I got this little tweak in my low back a couple of weeks ago. So I was only doing 2 working sets with triples at a bit of a lower weight than my standard working weight. So 85 kilos for a couple of working sets, as opposed to what I did last week, which was a small and slow ramp up to 80 kilos with a few singles and a bit of a higher reps for lower weight. And then I was jumping directly into some contrast jumping, which was basically loaded jumps, couple of loaded jumps as high as I could manage, and then a lateral jump, jumping over an obstacle. In this case, it was a bench that I was gonna be using later on also, and then another couple of maximal jumps with some extra weight. This way, I was getting 3 somewhat challenging reps with squats that I had to kind of tailor around my slow recovery towards a safe re-implementation of heavy squats, just looking after my low back, seeing that everything runs smoothly, and then superset that with some explosive stuff. So hoping to use a bit of that post-activation potentiation with jumping, and because I was planning on getting jumping in at some point, it seemed like a good way to pair everything together, kind of like making a mosaic of an improvised combination of a couple of sessions in. So because I was using exercises from 2 different sessions, I had to prioritize what I wanted to get in, and definitely some squatting just to see how the low back was going, alongside with jumping, and some isolation on the triceps, which was meant to come on the previous day, were gonna be in there. And I thought about keeping 3 exercises that were meant to represent each session, a compound movement, something explosive, and an isolation movement. So the way that I decided to pair these exercises together was a compound to start with, followed by something explosive, and the isolation movement to finish things off. So the first one was the squats superset with jumping, which felt like a good pairing, and then tricep work on the bench as the isolation movement that I was still loading quite a bit because I was using these 27.5 kilos, which are the weight. It is the weight that I am progressing through with these overhead extensions. And then I was moving on to the upper body for the strength movement, let's call it, the compound, which was overhead presses. And explosive movement was going to be something lower body still. And I finally reintroduced the kettlebell swings, or rather the dumbbell swings. And this is also something that was suggested to me in a comment on one of the previous videos. The swings with the dumbbell are something that I had not done in quite a while. I would say 4-5 months, something like that. As last year on occasion, I was dealing on and off with a bit of discomfort, inflammation in the lateral part of the backside of the knee. That's about where the distal head of the tendon attaches into the knee. So it was probably the bicep femoris, which was probably angered by the very high volume that I was doing on the Nordic curls. So I have been able to rein that back in. So unfortunately at that time I was doing those swings, but the explosive nature of the exercise was kind of aggravating the inflammation in the area, so it wasn't really allowing me to effectively rehab the area. And for the longest time I was really sad about letting this exercise go, albeit temporarily, because I felt that it was giving me very good value in terms of explosivity and reaction and ability to really push for dynamic and forceful hip extension. I started easy and it gave me good feedback, so I am really excited to get that exercise back into my rotation. Ciao.